quick. I'm going to say it better this time. All right. So Black Lives Matter definitely wasn't the first hashtag on Twitter, but it was probably the first big social responsible one. Now we have Me Too and Time's Up. Do you think those movements would have been as substantial on social media without the doors that Black Lives Matter kind of started in that movement?
Well, I think that every movement builds on other movements. So we are absolutely building on the movements, Black liberation movements that came before us. So our hope is, as people struggle for freedom, we contribute something that can be built upon. So Tarana Burke, the founder of the Me Too movement, is hugely influential to us, and we hope that we've offered something to her. There's a lot of cross-pollination and cross-conversation, and so we're very excited that people are stepping up and doing work to help us all get free.
Thank you very much, Melanie.
And if you could turn one more this way. Thank you. Thank you. Stay right here for me.
These issues that two sides seems to be purports to cover have been something that goes beyond before the hashtags, and sadly, hopefully, it won't have as long a future as it's had a history. But how did you tell the story of all these people, all these tragedies, and break it down into the focus you have in this story?
Well, the first goal was to pay respect to the victims. I mean, in all of these cases, nobody should be dead. Whether it's misfortune, whether it was intent, the society we live in now is instant information available at our fingertips. Anybody can pick up a phone, and now it's broadcast wherever. So with the change in times, the old things that used to be swept under the rug are not that anymore. So now we have to figure out how to create a even playing field, and not to say that all law enforcement is misguided and always off. It's just we're at the chasm is so great between what has been happening and what needs to happen in terms of accountability. So we try to tell the story and even inform people of things that they didn't know about these situations, to hopefully start a dialogue where people can start saying, what do we need to do to create change where either law enforcement has more restrictions on how they can deal with the general populace, and we need to know how they're thinking and how they move and stuff like that, because these are serious. Lives are lost. It's not just about somebody going to jail. There's somebody dead that's not seeing another day. So we need to do what we can to help tell these stories and hopefully generate conversation that will begin to spark change.
Lastly, I mean, the Me Too or Enough is Enough movement or all this stuff seems to have it's caught fire, caught gas fire. And do you think that America has been more willing to, because both of these have been long-standing problems, but it seems like the response to Me Too as opposed to Black Lives Matter and stuff has been received very different in America. I mean, why do you think?
I think people's closets are no longer closed. I mean, everybody is liberated and free to talk. So you know what, things that we did in the dark, and then how they say they come in the light, that's what's happening. So, I think all of it is unfortunate, and change needs to happen. I mean, it's long overdue. Change needs to happen.
But I guess a lot of people lost their jobs for wrongdoings they committed for the Me Too movement, and there's still a lot of officers that still but there's still a lot of officers that continue to keep their jobs after these questions.
There's policies that need to change. I think for law enforcement, they have a great responsibility, but they also have, the gray matter of of what's considered a threat for an officer is so vast that it can't necessarily be considered breaking the law if they felt like they were threatened. So that needs to shrink down to some like itemized things that we can all interpret and all understand. You know.
The federal case, civil rights case, is actually still going on. That's the last hope in this case that something will be done. I don't have high hopes because this is after all the Trump administration, and the new Attorney General has specifically said that he doesn't believe in these types of prosecutions. Even if they dig up some good evidence, I don't have a high degree of confidence that it's ever going to go anywhere.
You know who this?
Daddy.
What's your daddy's name?
Garner.
Regardless of whether we wear a uniform or the color of your skin, we're all people trying to survive and enjoy the American dream.
What is critically important in America, particularly now, is that governments invest in their police. That doesn't mean just new police cars, new guns. It's investing in training. It's investing in identifying the right recruits, people who want to come onto the job for the right reasons, and training them effectively, investing in the leadership that is going to build an ethos in a police department that is the right sensibilities of engagement with the community.
In the end, there was a tragedy on Bay Street that all sides can attest to. The question is, what reasonable and unbiased steps can we as a society take to prevent encounters with officials that rewrites the story of Eric Garner's death?
He was my son. I carried him for 9 months, and they should not have taken his life for no reason. He did nothing wrong. That's why I have to get out here, and I have to try to make sure that there are laws changed.
In the Eric Garner incident, we're talking about, first and foremost, the death of an individual. No one's happy about this. Cops aren't happy about this. And the cops that are involved in this case have to live with this for the rest of their lives. Clearly, Eric Garner's family and his friends are not going to forget this either, and rightfully so.
You know who this?
Dad.
Who?
Daddy.
Who?
Daddy.
What's your daddy's name?
Eric Garner.
All right, so what are we coming for? To straighten it up?
Straight
We
up.
gonna fix it up for you, make it look nice?
Make it nice.
Put this one here. Where you wanna put this one?
Over here.
Over here?
Yeah.
I wanted something to remind me of him, so I took the time and I built that. Got me some plexiglass and some screws and started building something me and a friend of mine dug. And that's what we came up with. The first one we built, somebody said burn it. So we said, well, that's all right, you burn it, that ain't gonna stop me. If it burn the first one, burn the second one, burn the third one, I'm gonna keep building it.
There's something I want you to always remember. Understand me? Make sure you fight for your daddy. You ain't gotta be violent. Do everything in a nice way. This is what they got laws for. To get cops out of the way, like off the street like that. Okay?
At the end of the day, the solid belief inside has to be that we're all people on both perspectives. There are poor people trying to make a living in this country for what? For the American dream, no different than I go to work every day to get a paycheck to spend time with my children. They're doing it in a different way, regardless of whether we wear a uniform or the color of your skin. We're all people trying to survive and enjoy the American dream.
Police leave home every morning, not knowing if they're gonna come back alive. And I understand that. But what they need to understand is some of us do too. And until we understand that about each other and seek an impartial way getting to the truth, we'll always have two sides.
round of applause. We thought it was powerful. That is the first of 4 episodes that will air starting on January 22nd. Each episode will deal with its own case. Obviously, that was the Garner case, and it would be Ezel Ford was a case that happened here in Los Angeles. John Crawford, the gentleman who was killed in a Walmart, and then Sandra Bland. And so they'll air over successive weeks, and we hope you guys will tune in. But without further ado, we want to bring up our panelists. We're going to go right into our panel discussion. And I'd like for you guys to help me welcome Vanessa McCullers from Mob United. Vanessa, where are you, Mob United? As Vanessa makes her way, we would like to have Lemuel Plummer. He is the creator and executive producer of Two Sides. I know that Melina Abdullah from Black Lives Matter is here. No, Vanessa and Lemmy. And can we have Charles Gaithier, retired Los Angeles Police Department? Gwen Carr, the mother of Eric Garner. Julius Tennon, Juvie Productions. Jason Tolbert, L. Plummer Media, and Andrew Wang from Juvie Productions.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
D'Angelo
8,
Proctor,
9,
head of
10.
programming for, Larry Hanna, attorney at law. Larry, and D'Angelo Proctor, head of programming for TV One. And of course, we always say the best for last. I'll give you this one. I'll take that. D'Angelo Proctor, head of programming for TV One, and of course, our moderator for the evening, Mr. Roland Martin.
All right, before we get to our panel conversation, we'll first have some opening remarks from the chairman of the board of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, Leon Russell.
Thank you, Roland, and good evening, everyone, and particularly Mrs. Carr. You know that everybody in this room and everybody across the country is with you. Our spirits are with you. This is obviously a very powerful piece of work. We need to thank D'Angelo Proctor. We need to thank TV One for having actually the courage to do this project, and all of you, thank you for putting in the necessary energy to create this marvelous project. Quite frankly, I believe that you've created something that Roland will be discussing for a long time. There are two sides. There is one truth. And the 4 episodes you've done can quite frankly be repeated with new names for the next year. And that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. So the issues raised the conversation that we have to have as a community. All of those things are important, and I look forward to hearing your discussion of the production of this, but more importantly, I look forward to hearing you tell us what you think the next step ought to be. And let me just say that this is probably one of the most appropriate things that we as the NAACP could do to kick off the 49th Annual Image Awards program on Monday night, on a night that we celebrate Dr. King, who talked about the need to recognize the humanity of all people and our responsibilities as individuals to step up to the plate and be engaged. And so this is a very appropriate way to begin this weekend. Thank you for giving us the opportunity.
All right, then. First off, to the, I think Darren checked back. If we could get more audio on the live feed, that's the response we're getting back from folks on Periscope, YouTube, and Facebook. First off, I'll open it this way, and Julius, I'll go to you first. There are a number of things that the production company of you and your wife were involved in. Why did you want to do this particular docu-series? That mic don't work.
That mic, this one works.
That one works. There we go.
We wanted to be involved with this project simply because of what's been happening around our country. We've all seen it, and with the advent of technology now, we're really getting it in real time. This stuff's been going on a long time. It's just that now we're getting to really see it, and it's just so prevalent. So it's always important to highlight these things and then figure out how we can have a conversation around these things. And it's always hard because it's somebody's untimely demise. But we have to have the conversation. We have to engage with our police because there are good guys out there and they work hard, and we know there's rogue guys out there, but it was just important to highlight this issue. And for the families of loved ones that are lost, it's always hard. And we just have to figure out a way to have conversations with our law enforcement and teach our young men too, how to engage, what they should do. There's a lot of things. We were downstairs talking. It's just a lot of different things that intersect these things. So there's a lot of gray, but we need to have a conversation. And so that was the big impetus role.
D'Angelo, one of the things that storytelling matters. So there are different ways to tell stories. Obviously, we're familiar with this story, covering this every day on News One now. Then, of course, John Crawford will be one of the stories. John Crawford was killed in a Walmart in Beaver Creek, Ohio, shortly after Eric Garner as well. And so, from a storytelling standpoint, what does the docu-series give in terms of the audience, in terms of being able to shed light on this?
If I understand the question correctly, TV One's motto, as you guys have heard, is represent. So that means that we endeavor in all of our programming to represent the many colors of the Black experience. And sometimes it's funny, and there's laughter, and there's love, and then sometimes there is serious issues. There are serious issues such as this. So I think that what we endeavor to do with Two Sides specifically is to paint exactly what the title of the series represents, and that is two sides. As you can hear, of course we hear one side. What I love about this series is the same, two different groups of people can watch it, and this was our intent, that if you're on one side of the coin, you are like, yeah, he shouldn't have resisted. But then there are other people that watch it that are like, wait a minute, y'all killed him. There are two sides to every story, and somewhere in between is the truth. And I think that because in this format of a docu-series, to answer your question, in a docu-series, it allows you the opportunity to hear those two sides in a narrative that you don't get in sound bites in a news program.
Vanessa, in terms of this particular story, being involved in so many others like this, did you get the feeling that this is sort of like Groundhog Day? This is the response. This happens. This is how the cops respond. This is how the politicians respond. And so you can move this story, frankly, from New York to Texas to Missouri to California, and then keep going to city.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the biggest issue that we have is that this feels like it's never ending, and that it continues to happen time and time again. And regardless, it feels sometimes like regardless how much we push to try and make a change, it continues to happen. And so, you know, we need to try and find a way to stop it both from the top, from the bottom, where kids are young, and also at the top where we're making laws to change this.
Charles, you obviously see this differently than an activist or the media person. And so as you are watching this and you're listening to police officers sort of give their version of it, what is going through your mind as you're hearing that?
Well, I'm no longer a police officer. I'm a citizen, so I look at it from the
Hold the mic up just a little bit closer.
I look at it from the perspective of a citizen, but then also a citizen who's had some law enforcement training, and what I saw is inconsistent with the way I was taught. We are taught to provide a quality service, to not judge people, to look at them as inherently violent or prone to violence. We have to see them for people first and treat them as such. But when you see someone as inherently violent or prone to criminality, that jaunts is the way you treat them. And I saw a lot of that in this video. And it's disturbing because it paints us all negatively. Because when you come across me, you might have, well, you know, Charles, he's a police officer, so he must be like the other police officer who treated me badly. So that has an impact on our ability to resolve crimes because we need to work with the community. We can't resolve these crimes without your help. Now there's a jaundiced perception of how we do that job, and so people might not want to work with us. And as you know, I think one of the takeaways from this show is the importance of distinguishing the difference between intent and impact. What you intend to do doesn't always match up with the consequences of what you did. Here you have a situation where the mayor, with his broken windows theory, wanted to reduce criminality. But the consequence of that cost Eric Garner his life. So we might have to think about how we do these things to put proper context in the way we go about working with the community and really distinguishing the difference and appreciating the difference in terms of intent and impact, because the impact is devastating, as we saw in this video.
Larry, obviously the officers involved in the death of Eric Garner, there was no indictment by the grand jury. We still have not had any decision by the Department of Justice. And so a lot of times when it comes to these cases, we only get a real understanding of really what took place when defense attorneys, when lawyers file civil suits, and then if it goes to trial, then we have some adjudication, if you will. And so the role that lawyers play in these cases, when if you're a family member, you're not part of the prosecution, but you're not one of the defendants, but and people think that, well, why can't a lawyer like yourself do more? You're not the prosecutor. You're sort of the public advocate, if you will, for the family.
Right. Well, first I want to thank the production company and thank you and the church for inviting me here to be part of this. I've been representing police officers for over 20 years and trying to protect them, and I think that we hear that there's some rogue officers. I think it's very few, and I think in LA it's getting fewer and fewer. But the Zell Ford is the case that I'm really familiar with, and I really wouldn't want to comment upon the other case because I don't know all of the facts. As you say, we don't get to see them until you get into the lawsuits, you get into the discovery. But I think really look at the next episode, I think, which when they do the Zell Ford, and you'll see that here you have the District Attorney of Los Angeles putting out the report, And I think that that weighs heavily, and you can see, you know, at least one side of the story coming out. And I think I was a little worried first getting into being part of this production and all of this, because we were worried, is it really going to be both sides of the story? And I really am impressed, and I think that you guys have really done a great job and shown both sides. And like I think you said, both sides, I hate to see there has to be sides that can say, oh, I see this way and I see it that way. But hopefully this will cause a dialogue. It'll help people to come together and talk about these issues and hopefully learn, and we can have fewer and fewer of these.
But Gwen, there's been lots of dialogue. It's been 4 years. There's been lots of dialogue. Do you believe, though, that part of the problem is that we've had lots of dialogue, we have not had enough action in terms of to change it? Because unfortunately, when you do see these cases, when you see the case in St. Louis where the officer was acquitted, where you can clearly see on the video where he was tossing a weapon in the particular scene, when you see the case of the 14-year-old girl who had her head slammed into the ground in McKinney, Texas, and also, of course, the other case out of Texas in Balch Springs, where the officer says that they were driving towards him, he feared for his life, but the video shows they were actually driving away. That, to me, I think from a community standpoint is, okay, we keep seeing these things happen, but when will they end?
That's true. Seems like all the officer has to say is, I feared for my life, and that's it. You know, they just have to make that one statement, and they're acquitted, they're not accountable, they don't stand trial, which is not fair, because we are all people, and if the shoe was on the other foot, they wouldn't take it so lightly if I said I feared for my life. You don't see any cases where a civilian, if he did any harm to a police officer, he is not getting off no matter what the situation is. And it shouldn't be like that, you know. And we do have to have more dialogue with police officers and with the community. They have to see us as people, because some police officers, they're not from our neighborhoods. And they come with an element of fear. They shouldn't come to our neighborhoods with an element of fear. Get to know the people in your neighborhood. Get to know the parents, get to know the children. So now if there is some wrongdoing going on, you have a source before any violence take place. Let's go talk to the parents, especially for the younger children. You know, so this is what we have to do, and us as parents, us as grandparents, we have to talk to our children also, and we must guide them, and we must let them know, you know, what can happen to them out there. And unfortunately, we have to have a different conversation with our children than maybe the Caucasians have with theirs, and it's unfortunate. We all should have the same conversation, to respect police officers, and police officers should respect us.
Go to Lemuel as well as Jason and Andrew. When you do one of these shows, typically what happens is you have to do lots of recreation, but because of the advent of video, and it's all over the place now, I mean, you literally had the actual video to tell the story that also allowed people to also make their own judgments, which I think was a huge part of this story. When you hear officers say they were not being choked, he wasn't being choked, and the people are going, we saw with our own eyes what was the case. And so talk about that as well in terms of being able to tell this story where you have this body of evidence, if you will, to actually tell it in real time as opposed to trying to recreate the facts of the case.
Sure. First of all, you know, before I kind of get into that, I gotta, you know, say that this project has really been, you know, a real important project for me. It's been a passion project. We had a very small crew and a team, you know, who put this together with us, and we were all very passionate.
How many?
Really small, really small. Small, when I say small,
5, 10?
Probably around 10.
Okay.
So, from the beginning, when we were developing, it was a challenge because when we got in the room and when we all started kind of, getting kind of, knee deep in the stories, it was kind of two sides in our own, production company, So this show, we've come a long way, and I just want to personally, before I comment on the recreations and the storytelling, just thank, first of all, Ms. Gwincar and, Nadia, our entire team, our lead editor, Addison, who did an amazing job putting this together, my investors who are here, obviously my partners, Viola and Julius and Andrew and D'Angela, thank you so much for green-lighting this project for us, because we wouldn't be able to tell this story and be able to show you guys this project. So, yes, I'm very blessed to be able to do that. I would say, and oh my gosh, my brother, LJ, who directed and co-executive produced this series with us, did an amazing job, and just everybody, Darren, everybody on the team. Man, this is crazy. If you guys don't mind, just giving them a round of applause, just the team. And I'm sorry if I'm missing anybody. Paul, everybody. But I'll say, for me, with this particular show, my goal was to always bridge the gap and between, white, black, and blue. And for me, it was, like they said, just to echo what everybody's saying, just spark that conversation, not controversy. And, these stories, man, in the Bay and just hearing it personally, it brought me to tears every time I was, watching this and in production, and it's everything we had to go through. It's a really serious, heavy show. And it's not easy to tell these stories because it's hard to balance it out, and obviously we shoot a lot more footage than what we cut together. So, it was, I think we all did a great job doing that. But we wanted to kind of tell it from a more, and show more atmospheric B-roll than just kind of doing your traditional, reenactments. We just felt like the environment was more of a character, than hiring actors to kind of, play, the characters involved. So for us, I think that was something new, and we tried it, and I think it really worked very well. But yeah, Jason and Andrew, if you guys can chime in on your thoughts, would be great.
I'll just sort of add to that, we made a real decision to, even as you saw in the beginning of how that episode began, that we're not hiding the ball, that we're doing an interview, we're doing a show about this. You see everyone sort of shuffling and fussing with their mics, but I think what's so powerful about some of these episodes is that you actually get to see the real live footage of what's happening. And we didn't have that kind of technology beforehand. And having that and just showing it in its raw form is so much more impactful than doing any kind of recreation. And so I do, we all had that same conversation, but how do we create a really raw experience for everyone so they know what it is to be in that situation?
Just to piggyback off of all of it, again, thank everybody who was involved. I need to say that as well. But anyway, with the recreations, we did make a conscious choice at the beginning to not go that route, not only because of technology, but also we wanted it to be 100% real from top to bottom. And although recreations, they can give you some sort of image to maybe take away, we didn't think that there was anything that was more powerful than to be able to use your imagination of what it was that we're attempting to show. And so we didn't want it to come across, cheesy, to use not a very technical term, but we wanted it to just be real from top to bottom. And so as you'll see, even in the next episode with Ezel Ford, we don't have that footage, but it is just as powerful because of just the raw emotion that comes from everyone who is involved. And so that was a very, very conscious decision to not go that route.
But we are here in Los Angeles, and when we think about Melina Pour's the Rodney King video, which was really the first significant case where you had video evidence. And we've seen since then, whenever these cases happen, this deconstruction, if you will, of what we see. Then it's like, well, no, you think you see this, but that's not really what you see. When you think about the Michael Scott case, of course, he recently sent to federal prison when they had a sentencing phase, and they brought in these experts to try to tell us, well, no, this was actually happening in the video, when we're going, no, but I'm actually seeing it. And we've seen this whole response in terms of body cameras, but even with that, that's not the be-all, the end-all, because there still are the explanations of that as well. And so for so many people, they reach the point where they say, okay, now wait a minute. If first we had bystander video, and pray for the brother who shot the video of the Eric Garner case, because no cop has gone to jail, but he's in jail for 4 years. First we said that, and then all of a sudden it was, well, praise the Lord, hopefully there's some security cameras nearby, but in the Laquan McDonald case, the cops erased the video from the Burger King. Then there's the body cameras, but then, well, we hope they turn the cameras on. Same dash cam, and so you sort of reach a point where you go, okay, when do we reach a point where something is fully acceptable? And I think for many activists, that's what's grating on the minds of so many folks.
Yeah, so let me just say why I'm sitting here. I think it's important that we understand that even though the show is titled Two Sides, and there's this talk that we hear of bridging gaps, we need to understand that our community, the Black community especially, is under siege. We are under attack. The police have declared war on us, right? So we can pretend like there are two sides, like we have to acknowledge the humanity of the police who kill our people, right? We need to first acknowledge the humanity of our people, right? So I pray that the words that come from my mouth do justice to the memory of Ezell Ford and of Eric Garner and John Crawford and Sandra Bland and Waukesha Wilson and Riddell Jones and all of the names who I can't say because I would use up my time, right? Since we're talking about Los Angeles, I want to lift up that this is the most murderous police force in the entire nation, right? LAPD kills more people than any other law enforcement unit in the country, and they get away with it, right? Bratton came from here, right? And so we need to understand that. I know that there's talk about good cops. I personally don't care how so-called kind the overseer is, right? When you are embedded in a system that is built to produce these outcomes, because these aren't accidents, right? These are not accidents, right? The police were created, study history, I'm also a professor, right? The police descend from slave catchers. They were meant to see Black people with targets on our backs. That's why the work that you do is so important, right? However, we are using this narrative that we should give them as much a voice as the voice of my sister, who I appreciate your work so much, Sister Carr. I really appreciate you. And the work of Erica was so important to so many of us, right? We have to stop tinkering with a system that was designed to produce these outcomes. Body cams don't help. Dash cams don't help. What will help is when we reimagine what public safety is, when we acknowledge that, there is no reforming a system that was intended to produce these outcomes. Let's, instead of spending upwards of 50% of our city budget, and that's the number for pretty much every major city, let's invest those dollars in the things that make our communities safe. Livable wage jobs, mental health resources, permanent housing, after-school programs, right? I want to make sure none of y'all have jobs, right? You can have a different kind of job, right? But we don't need police who occupy, assail, and murder our community members.
One of the things that, and anybody can jump in, so it's not a problem. One of the things that I find to be particularly interesting, you could say fascinating, whatever you want to use. And there's so many of these stories that in the 4 years we had News One Now, and the 4 years before that of Washington Watch we covered, I have yet to hear on a consistent basis from law enforcement, we screwed up and we got to fix this. And I consistently hear the Fraternal Order of Police defend literally any action. And then in the case of, like I love it when that fake cowboy, David Clark, loves ranting on Twitter, and he goes on the Fox News, who somehow, I swear, they have my email and phone number or are scared to call. I wonder why. But it's amazing when you have cases like in Chicago where the judge admonishes police officers for knowingly lying on the stand and no one investigates them. When they literally erase videotape evidence from a Burger King and then say, oh no, we didn't do it. And you don't have the so-called good cops who say anything. The so-called good white cops, because you have black law enforcement who's out there saying things. We put them on the air, and so you reach a point to where if the other side with two sides, if they won't even acknowledge wrongdoing, how can there actually be a dialogue or a conversation? Anybody? Pass the microphone up. You can use mine. Go ahead. Here.
Okay. Well, I think maybe, and I'm talking about Los Angeles because that's where I'm familiar with, and I think in essence, somewhat you're wrong. I mean, I see Chief Beck say that these officers did something wrong all the time. The police commission says people did something wrong. People are fired. Officers are fired. We have a system here in LA where we have a district attorney, Jackie Lacey, who looks at all of these cases. I think the department does come forward and says when there is something wrong. And I think
so there have been 300 murders at the hands of police in the last 5 years. Not a single officer has even been charged in those cases in Los Angeles County. I know attorneys are sometimes paid to misrepresent the truth. I hope that's not what you're doing here today. But when we look at the numbers, 300 dead, not a single officer charged. In the case of the murder of Ezell Ford, Wampler and Villegas, they haven't been charged. They murdered Ezell Ford, they haven't been charged. In the case of Eric Garner, have you gotten justice for your son? No, I haven't. So let's stop pretending. Let's stop pretending. Let's stop misrepresenting the numbers because you're not telling the truth. This is an era where we're demanding something better. We're demanding truth.
I don't think people should be saying people aren't telling the truth. I'm not saying that about you.
300 dead, not a single officer charged.
So,
am I lying?
I think
am
that,
I lying?
I think
300 dead, not an officer charged.
Okay, let's, sister.
Can you take anyone?
Hold up. Larry, your answer.
Good.
Then D'Angela, then Lemuel, then Gwen. Go.
We have a system where the district attorney, who's African American, looks at these cases. She can get a grand jury. Is there any case that you have seen where they said there should be prosecution and somehow it didn't get prosecuted?
All right. Go ahead. D'Angela, go ahead.
I can't speak for Los Angeles because I live in Washington, D.C. right now, but what I would like to say in response to this conversation is just the importance of media in it all, because there may be situations where police officers have spoken out and the media just didn't cover it. Because you said, Roland, you've had African-American police officers on News One Now.
Well, but that's part of the problem. Part of the problem is those same black cops will also tell you they feel unsafe when they don't have the uniform on or when they're undercover. And so like everything else, black folks are the ones speaking up, but then you have to have other police officers who are owning up to it. And again, what happens is, it's like, for instance, I'm a journalist. If there's somebody who screws up in my industry and they plagiarize, I'm gonna call them out, and I don't have to be the one has to ask me, can you please do it? But what happens is, in so many cases, we see it in Baltimore, so many different places, where officers will screw up and cops will say, I'm not going to say anything because they know how powerful the blue line is.
But my point, Roland, is that all of these people in this room, I'm sure you guys watch and have TV One, right? Okay. Did you watch News One Now every day? Did you watch the media and the networks that held these people accountable every day? That's my point, is that we as citizens and as media, we have an obligation as well to provide a platform for people to feel safe to actually come out and speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I feel like the officers are not held accountable enough, because how could we have so many murders unarmed, not talking about the criminals out there, I'm talking about the unarmed murders, and everything was done right. Something's wrong with that picture. But you know, in all, we got to have this conversation with America. We got to make them uncomfortable. We have to let them know that we care. And first of all, we got to start caring about ourselves. We got to show them that we care about each other so that we could demand that they care about us also. In our neighborhoods, we have to police our own neighborhoods. We have to be responsible for our children. And we must make sure that we can't make sure, but we can lay the foundation that they go in the right direction. And when we do all that we can do, and now we can say, hey, we are doing our job. Now we want the police to do theirs in a proper way.
Now, I think that's what, when you talk about that level of frustration, especially for African Americans, because I think about one of the stories that you're going to be telling, and it deals with Sandra Bland. And if anybody, and again, when you talk about the benefit of dash cam video, a lot of people, and again, I haven't seen that particular episode, but a lot of people have only seen, they only focus on obviously when the officer was talking to her outside of the car. But if you actually roll that video back, if you actually go to the beginning of that video, you'll see that he actually was dealing with another person. She's coming out of the parking lot at Prairie View A&M, and she turns right. Then all of a sudden, you see the police car swing around and follow her through a couple of lights. Then she gets pulled over. And I'm watching the video, and the first thing I'm saying is, why is he stopping her? It was just, I mean, literally, you're watching it, and you're going, why is he stopping her? If you even go look at the entire video, at no point in the video do you hear him say, you illegally changed lanes, you didn't have an ID. He just simply stopped her. And then when you watch the video and then you see this officer, you can clearly see him pushing buttons. You can clearly see when he knows she's agitated. And then, because we all know how to talk condescending. We've all been there when you say, are you done? We all know what that means. And you're watching it. And part of this issue here, and anyone can speak to this, part of this issue is here, officers know this. And this is why I believe this is where they will screw over citizens. When an officer knows that once they give a lawful command, even if you know it's not constitutional, you have to abide by it. And when you watch that video, when he says, get out of the car, he knew she was not going to do it. And that's what gave him justification to arrest her and led to that whole deal. And so I think what the public is asking for is, when will you actually have real accountability of police officers? Because even though you say some will get fired, they still get their pensions. Some still retire early. Well, in the case of John Burge, the city had to spend upwards of $100 million on settlements and paying his legal fees because of what he did, and he still got his pension. Anyone can jump out. Anyone can respond. Accountability, that's what people are waiting for from law enforcement, to be actually held accountable.
I mean, I would say, I'll start off, you know, we knew that the show would spark this kind of emotion and dialogue. And, you know, I had an opportunity to literally be in the field and speak to both, you know, Larry and, you know, police officers, you know, and obviously the families for me, my hope and goal for this show, again, is to have a healthy dialogue, where, we're not attacking each other, when we're having the conversation. And I know it's very, very sensitive, and I know that it's very difficult. But I think even our approach as producers, just to get them to participate, because most of the time you don't even see the officers or officers adjacent even participating in projects like this. So what we found effective was, because obviously it's sensitive to us. I'm a young African-American man, and I know how I feel when, I've gotten pulled over by a police officer, or, when I see cops. I mean, I have a friend who's actually here who's a police officer. And, we talk about this stuff all the time, but, I just think just hearing from him, talking to everybody else, is just having that dialogue in a calm, healthy way, getting the opportunity, and it's hard. I don't know how we can do it, but hopefully when people watch the series and the show, because every case and every story is different. So, from Eric Garner to Ezel 4, there was no actual footage. But there is enough evidence to, for people to have their perspectives. Sandra Bland, I actually interviewed the actual sheriff, and at first I went in completely like, just like, how do I even talk to this person? And because I already, I had, come to my conclusions, like, it is what it is, but just hearing them and just listening to his rationale, I think I was able to understand a little bit. Doesn't make it right, justified, but I think that, again, the approach and how you communicate is really what I think is going to help start to bring the change.
But this is the struggle, and this is the struggle. For the officers involved, they're still alive.
Sure.
They're still alive. So it's very easy to have a calm conversation when you're still alive and you get to go to your family and you get to go back to your job.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's hard for Gwen Carr to be calm. It's hard for. This is what. No. I understand, but just follow me. Just follow me here. Just follow me here. But I just need. But when Sandra Bland was killed, I'm using killed for a reason. Putting her in that jail cell killed her. We're covering the story. We're covering it. We're discussing it every day. So probably 4 or 5 days after that happened, in Prairie View, Texas, her sister posted on Twitter a photo of me and Sandra Bland. And as I'm looking at the photo and I'm trying to remember, I take tons of photos. Then as I'm beginning to think about it, then I begin to remember that was a Women's Expo in Chicago. I remember at the convention center. And then I'm remembering, because she was a very tall sister. And so then when I see her mom at Congressional Black Caucus, and her mom says, she turns to me and she says, well, I'm interviewing her, and she says, I need you to know that my daughter watched your show all the time, loved watching you, was so excited when she came back with the photo, and she said she was going to be on your show one day. And unfortunately, this is how she made your show. When you hear that, and then when you juxtapose that with the video of the state trooper sitting in the car and the recording is still going, and he is on the phone, on the mic, talking with the supervisor, trying to come up with what law did she break to justify the arrest, and we're hearing it in real time. It's a little hard when he doesn't get indicted. And then when they move to dismiss him, and then he's still fighting it. That's why this thing is so emotional, because I believe the reaction from the community would be totally different if one of these cops is actually indicted for murder and convicted for murder, not in the case of Michael Scott, where there was a hung jury, and then he pled guilty to federal civil rights charges. That, I think, why this thing is so emotional. You want to go ahead and make a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple things. One is that all of the attorneys, I think, that protect officers and try and do the best job they can, they all talk. We talk to them, and none of them want bad officers. And I think there are a lot of checks and balances. And officers in LAPD have gone to jail. They've been tried. There are many, many different checks and balances to take bad officers out. But the other thing is, we talked about funerals and stuff, and I've sat with the widow of a police officer who was just killed by gang members or was hit by a bullet. I've seen the children. I've sat with them as they're crying. They, in any second, a stop for something very mild can turn into a death sentence for them. And they talked about that there's sort of a siege mentality, or that officers are scared to be out in the field. They really, there isn't. It's, at least in LA, I don't see that. And I talk to officers all over. And they're scared, but they're scared of the administration when they go after them for minor little things. When, again, but you think about the police officer.
Yeah, I
and
know
their
that
families.
feeling, like switching lanes without signaling, stuff like that. But here's my question. But hold on. Here's my question. No. Here's my question. No, but so you talked about those, and you talked about the families of those officers. When is the last officer who has been killed and the perpetrator has not been caught?
Not been caught. I think that 90% they're caught.
That's my point.
99.
My point is, when an officer is killed, you have an entire community that mobilizes to find the perpetrator, and that person is captured, and that person is indicted, and that person is charged, and that person goes to trial. And 99% of the time, that person is going to get convicted. So for that police officer's family, there's justice. But for that person who has been killed by an officer, who then says, I feared for my life, they were driving at me, but the video says they were driving away, or in the case of, well, he was trying to wrestle a gun, or in the case of the cop in St. Louis, when it was his gun, but his DNA wasn't found on the gun, but your DNA was found on the gun, but he's still found not guilty, then you get the anger, the resentment, because even when you have cases where even the folks on Fox News, like in the case of Eric Garner, said, that man got choked to death, the officer who did it is still collecting a salary and has never even gone to trial, even in the Department of Justice. That's why you have this anger, and when every case happens, and another, and another, and another, and another, and another, in this city, in this city, in this city, that's when people say, you know what, we can't be calm. I think that's what keeps driving this, and that lack of accountability is what's driving it. Gwen, you want to make a point? Then Milana, go ahead. And so then I'm going to do a round robin final comment from each panelist. Go ahead.
While we have one of the best criminal justice systems in the world, you know, these things, it is a problem. It is a problem that these officers aren't being brought to justice. But programming like this makes us have these kind of conversations. Feelings, it's raw, it's real. We just have to keep fighting for justice. I mean, there's a lot of advocates out there doing incredible work, you know, and we want to see some of these officers be held accountable for what they do. But that does not discount the fact that there's other police out there who are doing what they're, just think if we didn't have any police. How many of us would want to live in this world, in this city, without any police at all? I mean, you know what I'm saying? All I'm saying is that there's systemic problems, there's problems from the top. And maybe this is something, you know, the Supreme Court. It needs to start from the Supreme Court down to start making these kind of changes in these states and hold these states and hold these police forces accountable. And then maybe we start getting some convictions, because that's what we need. We really do need to get some convictions, because a lot of these cases prove that it's wrong. What happened is wrong.
But the problem is the Supreme Court has already ruled on what the standard is, and the Supreme Court has already decided that the level of leeway that a police officer has when they are in the field. And so the reason we have the cases is because the Supreme Court has already ruled. So part of the problem is literally, the Kojima Powell in St. Louis, again, that happened shortly after Michael Brown, which was devastating. This was a brother who was mentally disabled. And this literally, we showed it on News One Now, it was 16 seconds from the moment the police officer pulled up and opened the door before the first shot was fired. It was two police officers with guns. He has a butter knife in his hand. And it was, he lost his life in the span of 16 seconds. And the law says, because of the number of feet that existed between him and the police officers, that was their justification to fire 9 shots into his body. And so that's what people are struggling with all across this country. We're going to go to final comments. Go ahead.
I just want to say, with all of these, when the police kill someone unarmed or unjustified, and maybe the department, they get together and they see it's a wrong that's been done. But what do they do immediately when they think that this may come to an indictment? They start collecting money for the police officer. They don't do anything for the family who they just killed their loved ones. That is so disheartening, so sad. Why don't you give comfort to the family? The family now, they got to figure out, some of them don't even have money to bury their dead. Some of them, the dead might have an apartment. Now, what am I going to do? I have to go up there and clean out the apartment. They're not thinking of this. All they're thinking about, let's collect money, and in case there's a trial, we can pay for it, or we can give this money to their families. And I don't think that's right.
I just want to point out that the attorney on this panel has pointed to no specific incident of police firings, of police indictments. You asked about national numbers. Last year, 1,100 people, upwards of 1,100 people were killed at the hands of police. There were only 6 officers who were even charged, right? So when we think about that, you're talking about, a calm dialogue. I don't want a dialogue with police. The reason that I participated in this series is because I think the community dialogue is important. Lifting up community narrative is important. We need to understand that what he is very well paid to do is to drill down on any little technicality, right? I'm sitting here watching this and I'm thinking, but selling cigarettes, Eric already paid the tax on the cigarettes. So this is but then I'm going, why am I getting all up into their argument when the real issue is they had no business killing Eric? They had no business. And he wasn't selling cigarettes. But my point is, we're arguing, was he selling cigarettes or not? Did he pay taxes or not? The issue is his life matters. His life matters. And they don't get to kill our babies and expect a calm response for us. So I hope that we have more community dialogue. Brother Roland, can I just say one thing about you before I stop? I want to appreciate you. You have always spoken for us. And there's an African proverb, until the lion tells the story, The hunter will always be the hero. Thank you for being our lion.
I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Vanessa.
I think one of the most unfortunate thing about these circumstances is that we know that there is no easy answer or solution. Even if we have several convictions, there's still so much work to be done because we have hundreds and hundreds of years of being held under and held down and oppressed. I think that we need to realize that part of the solution is changing the perception, because bias starts at a very early age, and these men or boys that become police officers live with these biases all their lives. So when we start attacking that and start looking to change the perception of our young men, our young black men, black and brown boys, then we can probably start to see some solutions take place.
Jason.
Wow, first of all, this is crazy powerful. But for me, in doing this show, because there's two things with this show. There's one, me as a black man who has experienced many, many things at the hands of the police. And on the other hand, being a producer and attempting to tell a show from an unbiased perspective. And at the end of the day, what I was hoping is that this helps to spark whatever the solution is, whether it is the community dialogue, whether it's the dialogue amongst each other. I personally don't have that answer, but in doing this show, we were hoping, hey, maybe, just maybe, probably not, because here it's a TV show and we're small guys in LA, but maybe and hopefully it can spark somebody who does have some sort of answer who can help to move us forward, whatever that answer may be. And so, you know, what I do appreciate is that we're at least even all sitting here talking, regardless of whether we agree or we think that, you know, whatever it is. I do appreciate the fact that we're all sitting here talking, and hopefully, you know, there's something that comes of this. I sincerely appreciate you. I really do. I want to say that. And outside of that, you know, that's it.
Charles.
Wow, that's all I can say about tonight. But I think it's an important thing that we have this discussion. Some might argue that we're talking too much. But I think that in order to resolve issues like this, we have to continue to talk, even when it's painful, even when we disagree, even when we think we're talking in circles or talking to the same crowd. We have to continue to communicate. Now, as a former police officer, I joined because I wanted to make a difference in my community. I lived in LA all my life. I grew up around gangs. I didn't like that. I wanted to make a difference. And so I don't appreciate the broad brush that all police officers are bad and that we're all out to hunt and kill black people, because that's not what we're here to do. Some of us, a great many of us, are here to make a difference, to make your life better. When there's shots fired, we're the ones that are driving to that call. When someone's hurt, we're the one trying to resolve that issue. When someone is killed, we're doing that investigation. So the idea that you can live without us, to me, misses the important step of what we're actually here to do, what a police department is actually here to do. And that's to facilitate a healthy and safe community. Now, not all of us are bad. Some of us are very bad. We've had officers that have killed people. We've had officers that have planted evidence on people and sent people away. I understand that. Now, I was a crash officer. I was a gang officer. I understand that. I was here when you had the situation with the Rampart investigation. I understand all those things. But that does not deter my motivation to assist you and to help you and to risk my life when I don't even know who you are.
Andrew.
I just want to echo what everyone's been saying, which is I really appreciate everyone coming to this table with open hearts, strong emotions, and just speaking their own truths. For me, one of the most important things that we really wanted to do when we did this series was, you know, these are only 4 names. And there's so many people so many other names that we could be talking about. And the fact that, you know, TV One really supported us in sort of following these high-profile cases, I feel like one of the things that we really wanted to maintain was that these people don't get forgotten. Because unfortunately, there are so many more people that are experiencing this day in and day out. So I'm just thankful that we got the opportunity to do this and that we can spark some sort of conversation to happen.
Lemuel?
Thank you again. You are awesome. Let's give it up for her. She is awesome. Her passion. First of all, like I said, for me, my hope is that, you know, things will change in a positive way. You know, I'm hoping that, you know, Larry, you can take everything that you've heard, all the passion, all the tears, use that influence, you know, and, you know, I really hope that you can use that and, you know, make change, man, you know, at the end of the day. And, you know, let's keep working hard, you know, boots on the ground, you know, and doing everything we can to bring change. I think, you know, for me, when I was kind of saying a calm dialogue, like I said, it's my approach, you know, and what I do as a producer, you know, I got to kind of hear everybody, you know, and, you know, it's difficult, you know, and, you know, I'm just hoping that this show, like I said, can bridge the gap. And, you know, my girlfriend, you know, her sister is a police officer, and, you know, we have this conversation all the time, you know, so I'm just hoping things change. And, you know, being I'm 31, you know, I'm probably one of the youngest ones up here, and, you know, I hope that my generation and my era can watch this program and learn from it and hear both sides so that they can make the right decision, or they can support and, you know, any of these movements, and if they're pursuing law enforcement, that they can take this everything that they've learned from this show and make right decisions. So I just want to thank everybody again, everybody involved, the crew, everybody who participated in this, everybody who helped make this happen. Nadia, thank you so much. This is Gwen's publicist. She represents Mrs. Carr, and she's been working hard to make this happen. So Harold, again, thank you for the opportunity. D'Angelo, thank you. Everybody, thank you for coming out and watching and taking the time. Appreciate it. Roland, thank you again.
Thank you. Larry?
Just real quick, again, I'm just so impressed with this show and what you were just saying. I think, and I was actually thinking about what you were saying, that I want the officers to see this. I want dialogue. I don't want to hear about people not having dialogue. I think it's so important, and that's what we have to have. And show this in the schools, show this at the police departments, and I want to see a real difference and to get a more understanding on both sides. I think that's what's needed. And thank you.
Proctor?
I'm going to put Roland on the spot for a minute because I think that the most important thing that's my takeaway from this panel is that everyone in this room should vote and encourage other people to vote as if your life depends on it, because it does. And the reason why I'm going to put him on the spot for a minute is because he has a very healthy appreciation for the power of vote, and he can articulate it so well about voting on the local level, and it's just from the local all the way, because you mentioned the Supreme Court. I mean, if Trump wasn't in there, we may have a Democrat in there. You might have an opportunity to, let me not be partisan.
That's right.
Let me back up. Let me back up.
This is not a nonprofit venue.
Rewind. But my point is that you have to vote because the people that you put in those places are the ones that make decisions that affect our lives every single day. And the only way that you can change it is to vote. You can't only do it in a tweet.
Julius?
I want you to tell them.
I got this.
Thank you.
No, this has been really fantastic, and you can see the raw nerves, you know, on both sides, and you know there really is two sides, and voting is important, and particularly on the local level. It's grassroots, and we just have to kind of encourage each other, encourage all those around us, especially our young people, to get out and vote. You know, a lot of folks died for that vote, so let's get out and let's start on the local level, and then we can start changing some things and seeing some substantive difference.
Final panelist comment, Gwen.
Yeah, I want to say on that issue too about voting, don't let anyone tell you that your vote don't matter. Because if it didn't matter, the rich wouldn't spend so much money to keep us from voting. So don't let anyone discourage you, and don't only you go vote, take your whole household with you.
All right. We'll close this with my final thoughts. First and foremost, let me first thank all of you for coming out tonight. There are many other things you could have been doing here in LA, and you chose to be here. Second of all, let me also thank you, because over the last 4 years, many of you have been avid viewers of News One Now. When we moved from 9 a.m. to 7 a.m., I got y'all emails and tweets because y'all were mad that you had to wake up and watch at 4 a.m. because you refused to read your DVR manual to learn how to record the show, and you were blaming us. But a significant number of folks from the West Coast would often talk about what the show meant to them. When Lowell Henry would hit me up and say, he said, every morning, me and Katherine Jackson, Michael Jackson's mama, are watching the show and sending me running commentaries during the show via text message. I'm like, I guess y'all watching. And so many others, and so it matters. And the reason I'm saying that is because a white male television executive once asked me, why do you keep leading the show with these stories? Why do you, it's like constantly. And I said, well, because black people keep getting shot by cops. And what this white male television executive did not understand is that unless it was a major case, they wouldn't get on CNN, MSNBC, or Fox News. What people don't realize is that what we were able to do with this show is provide a voice to black attorneys and black police officers and brothers and sisters who were with Noble and former black police chiefs and folks who were former black district attorneys, and even when black DAs were under assault, like Aramis Ayala, the first black state's attorney in Florida, and Marilyn Mosby in Baltimore, even when they were criticizing Ken Thompson in Brooklyn, that was one place where they knew they could get a fair exchange. And so it mattered because the families were able to get on. The number of times, as I said, I talked with Gwen or had Erica on the show or had other family members and had Sandra Bland's mom and all of those different folks is because even when, and John Crawford, in one of the stories that you're going to tell, a critical story, many people have forgotten about his case because, again, he was killed between Eric Garner and Michael Brown. And most people only think about that summer. They think about Eric Garner's killing first, and then Michael Brown's killing in Ferguson. But his killing literally happened right in between. And his father came up to me at an event in D.C., and he just said, thank you. He said, you always mention my son when you mention Rekia Boy and Ayanna Jones, and you mention Eric Garner and Michael Brown. And so black media matters. Black-owned media matters. And so whether it's a daily news show, whether it's this docu-series, it absolutely matters. And what we have to do is support that, because if we don't, it goes away. And so many people they've been asking me, whether it's on the red carpet, even tonight, and folks even social media, and folks are like, well, what are you doing next? What's going to happen? What's going on? We haven't decided in terms of what kind of things we're going to be doing content-wise. But one of the reasons why, and Darren will tell you, when they called me and they said, hey, you know, we want you to moderate this, I said, I will only moderate this if we're also able to live stream it. Because if you can't place it on the network or you can't place somewhere else, we now have the capacity to still be able to get our story out unvarnished, unapologetic, directly to our consumers. And literally, while this has been going on, I've been tracking it, and more than 10,000 folks have seen this on Periscope, more than 30,000 on Facebook, and several thousand on YouTube. And so just understand that you're sitting here going, look at the people in here, but literally upwards of 50,000 people have been watching this for the past hour. That's also what's going on. So look for more of that, because again, I say on the air, only way I'll ever go quiet is when God tells me it's time to come home. But there's always a way to tell a story, even though one door closes, one always opens. And so we thank you for coming out. Be sure, when does this premiere?
It's January 22nd.
January 22nd on TV One. And the last thing, since D'Angelo, because that was always my plan, somebody asked me outside, I said, what do you think about Oprah 2020? I said, I don't care. But here's why I said I don't care. I can't focus on 2020 when Stacey Abrams is going to be in the Democratic primary for governor of Georgia in March this year. When Andrew Gillum is a brother running for governor of Florida, that primary is August this year. There's a sister who is running for county executive in Prince George's County, who's now a state's attorney. That primary is in June of this year. If you are focusing on 2020 and you are literally ignoring judges and DAs and state reps and state senates and governors in 2018, your priorities are mixed up. You can't complain about the issue in terms of these laws if you don't understand that, yes, in certain places, the city council and the mayor hires the police chief or city manager form of government. And so we saw it after Ferguson, 67% black folks living in Ferguson, but you only had a small percentage increase of black turnout in the next election. And I know some people are watching or sitting here and they say, well, you know what? I hear what you're saying, but I just don't believe the vote's going to count. Well, tell that to the woman who just lost the Virginia House of Delegates seat by a coin flip because they were tied. Tell that to the folks, of course, when Trump wins Wisconsin by less than 100,000 votes. But the voter ID law that was passed in Wisconsin kept 200,000 folks from voting. And that voter ID law was passed because after the 2010 midterm elections, Republicans took control of the entire state legislature. Tell that in North Carolina, where the same thing, where black turnout dramatically increased after 2008, and they began to change all the voting laws. The point, as Gwen said, if voting didn't matter, they would not be working so hard to stop folks from voting. And I'm not just, and let me say this here, not just black people. Because when you had a county clerk in Wisconsin who said in 2016 that she purposely moved the early voting location from a college campus because too many of those young white kids are voting Democrat and moved it to a far out place with a small parking lot, it was done on purpose. When you have elderly folks in Wisconsin who could not vote, same reason. When Ohio has a new law where they say they will remove you from the voting rolls even if you miss one election, the Supreme Court heard the case on Wednesday. That was a white guy who sued them, it wasn't black. You have an assault on elderly folks, on young white voters, not just African Americans. And so do understand, I did a live stream on this last week, there is a target on the back specifically of black people because of what just happened in Alabama. 98% of black women voted for Doug Jones. 96% of black men voted for Doug Jones. Even when they were not pounding the pavement, we understood what Roy Moore was all about. The point I'm making is this here, is that a lot of us talk about, well, vote, it's important. Jimmy Lee Jackson died. That led to Bloody Sunday. And so I tell folks, you know what? If you can't get somebody young to understand Jimmy Lee Jackson, that's fine. So you should do this. If somebody says, why should I vote? Your response should be this here, because Eric Garner can't. Why should I vote? Because Rakia Boyd can't. Why should I vote? Because Ayanna Jones can't. Why should I vote? Because Trayvon Martin can't. And so if you don't want to use examples from the 50s and 60s, that's fine. Use the examples of the young brothers and sisters today who can't vote because they were killed. That will get their attention. Folks, thanks a lot. Have a great evening.
I told y'all.
Also, let's give it up for Pastor Edgar Boyd and First Lady Florence Boyd for allowing us to be here. Thank you so very much.
We want to thank you guys for coming out. We really appreciate it. We want to make sure that everyone tunes in on January 22nd for Two Sides. Make sure you watch on Monday The 49th annual NAACP Image Awards will be airing on TV One. Thank you, everyone, and drive home safely.